My piece of advice I would encourage for you to understand is like, if you're trying to find a shortcut to profits in crypto, you're probably going to learn a lesson, an expensive lesson, because quite frankly, and no offense, but unless you're a seasoned investor and you're like really unemotional, you're a mature, emotionally immature investor, being able to, number one, put a lot into a coin that you don't know much about, and then being able to not let your greed take over and actually take profits when it's appropriate. And then also, if you don't do that and it's crashing like crazy because it's an altcoin, and after bull runs, typically these go very, very much down. Put it into Bitcoin, I'm sure you're going to be fine. There's no guarantees in crypto, but I think that's a conservative way to go about it. But also feeding into this kind of relative uncertainty of stablecoins is now the SEC and a lot of US based regulators. They see stablecoins as like their biggest threat.
There's a lot trying to vie for Ethereum's spot as the #1 smart contract out there. So you have Solana, which has been massively up also primarily because of NFTs. Then you have DOT, you have Cardano, you have Algorand, you have Avalanche. Is there anything that has a potential to somehow beat Ethereum, or you think that Ethereum, because of realistically speaking, all of the apps are in Ethereum, the users are in Ethereum, the traffic is also in Ethereum. Is there a case in the future that there could any of these blockchains would try to attack Ethereum's dominance as well, or you think they'll somehow just coexist, because it's still a wide open space right now in adoption of smart contracts as well?
I think it's going to be a all-inclusive environment. I'm not sure. I mean, certainly they would love to take over Ethereum and be the new Ethereum. Who wouldn't want to do that? But the fact of the matter is that the lack of scalability that Ethereum is seeing now is why these platforms are seeing such growth, like Solana. The cost of transacting on Ethereum and interacting with smart contracts on Ethereum are particularly expensive. So that's why Solana is taking off. Cardano finally has smart contracts now. So really interesting to see how that's going to develop. But Ethereum has been around for many years now, for 5-6 years now. So that's a huge network effect, and not to mention all the projects that are really successful and built on it. That's huge. And so they have, I don't know, there'd have to be something majorly wrong with Ethereum for them to overtake it, in my opinion. But we're also seeing these platforms like Polygon and this whole concept of blockchain interoperability and bridges. So, trying to leech off of each other, or just, it's, in my opinion, this focus on interoperability, like Polkadot is doing as well, is an indication for what the future is an open source community, right? It's not proprietary. So in my opinion, there's going to be a reason to use Solana over Ethereum. There's going to be a reason to use Ethereum over Solana, and vice versa, and all these other ones. So the beauty is that we don't have to choose. We are the lucky end user that has these platforms that are competing to provide the best product for us. I mean, Solana is great. It was definitely the darling of like the early 2021 price movement, obviously. But there's some concerns with Solana as well, with its type of centralization and what it takes to run the network, the expense of that, and how that can be limiting in the future. None of these platforms are seeing the type of traffic that Ethereum is. I'd be really interesting to see how they handle that, because I guess, either something goes majorly wrong with Ethereum, or they have fixed the scalability issue without sacrificing things like decentralization or security. So that's a triangle that all these platforms are trying to, achieve the pinnacle of all those, but usually one or two has to be sacrificed to achieve the other. So if there's a perfect cryptocurrency out there, it could probably overtake Ethereum, but it doesn't exist yet. But I hope it does one day.
I want to make this very, very interesting, and so that I don't know if it's gonna make you nervous of sorts, but if you will force rank them 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, how would you do it? 1 being the best, 6 being it's not that it's bad, but in terms of if you'll allocate capital to it, it will be the least that you would put into it. So
basically what I would invest is based on a lot of things like security and potential profit, obviously. So for me, it's like Ethereum, number one. Number two would be Cardano,
okay.
and then Solana, and then Polkadot. And then Avalanche and Algorand are probably tied, or they can switch back and forth. I haven't dove really deep into those yet, but I would be comfortable with that order. Yeah.
Got it. And what I've realized, I've taken the time to study Cardano. Their community, they're one of the nicest people that I've met. Hands down, the Cardano community people are very, very nice people as well.
They're nice if you're saying something nice about Cardano.
But it's nice to that's why I love talking to you, because you're also in the middle. It's not that there's one each of those cryptocurrencies have its advantage over the other. It's not like that. Oh, it's just Bitcoin and everything else doesn't matter anymore. So I think there's merit to each of the currencies, or at least the tokens that are being
Sure.
Now, we're talking about altcoins. So what's your approach right now, October 2021? And I want to address this to people who are hearing this for the first time, and they're seeing that, okay, if I enter Bitcoin, it's at 60 plus thousand. If it goes to 100, my upside is not as big as compared to maybe trying and looking for an altcoin. How did you scour, and how do you try to filter out which altcoins not just have merit, given that a lot of them are higher. Solana's pretty much in the higher end. Polkadot's also in the higher end of things. What's your metrics? What's your criteria if you're just coming in October 2021?
For anyone who is watching this and you haven't invested in a solid crypto like Bitcoin or Ethereum, my piece of advice I would encourage for you to understand is, like, if you're trying to find a shortcut to profits in crypto, you're probably going to learn an expensive lesson, because quite frankly, and no offense, but unless you're a seasoned investor and you're like really unemotional, you're a emotionally mature investor, being able to, number one, put a lot into a coin that you don't know much about, and then being able to not let your greed take over and actually take profits when it's appropriate. And then also, if you don't do that and it's crashing like crazy because it's an altcoin, and after bull runs, typically these go very, very much down. Will you panic sell at a loss? What is your plan? So I prefer to invest in altcoins before a big bull run, like before this fifth leg, just because towards the end of the accumulation phase, and once it starts really kind of like what we saw in May, for example, in February, in January, when it was doing pretty well, is that you could kind of tell what was a trending topic, what was a popular thing that was going to be the highlight of this year's bull run: NFTs, DeFi. And so you can kind of just, during a bull run, if you pick the right category, a lot of these coins are going to be doing well. So it's not that difficult to, just kind of spread your seeds around and just do some dust and see what happens. And then if you see one particularly kicking off, maybe accumulate a little bit more. But also what you're saying is now, going into this fifth leg, and things have already seen their all-time highs, but now we're seeing that these altcoins are cooling off a little bit. A cool thing to look at is, if you have your eye on an altcoin, see how far it is from its all-time high and when that all-time high was hit. Because if it, for example, Solana or Cardano, Chainlink, Matic, a lot of these did really well earlier this year, and they're not quite there yet. DOT is, I think, going to do pretty well, obviously. But that could be your buying opportunity. Look for coins right now that were doing really well in May and June, and see how far they were from their all-time high. If it's still been since about that time and they still have 20, 30, 40% or something from that, go ahead and see what it can do for the rest of it. Because a lot of people will have that kind of, a lot of retail investors will have that comfort in those altcoins, knowing, oh, they already did good, I'm going to wait and see how it does. So they're probably going to do well at the end of this as well. There's no guarantees. this is not investment advice, but it's an idea of at least some analytics that you can check out for altcoins.
Do you have like a criteria that I'm not getting anything lower than this market cap rank? And the trade-off there is the higher it is in its market cap is the upside, in my opinion, it becomes harder. It doesn't have that much leeway to go up versus the ones that are smaller. But the ones that are smaller, though, they're relatively the ones that are riskier as well. Is there like a logic that, okay, only as far as this and not lower than this anymore?
Typically, I pay attention to coins that are on like the first or second page of CoinGecko.com or CoinMarketCap.com. But certainly, like in February of 2020, we were getting into coins that like no one had heard of before. And again, they were so cheap, and it was just like, all right, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. And it was like a lot of small investments that turned out to be really well. There are a lot of them that didn't. And so it's not like shooting fish in a barrel. That's why you invest a little bit just to see what can happen, because for whatever reason, maybe that coin doesn't become popular and isn't perfectly trending, or they have a stiffer competition and it's going to be outshining them. So yeah, especially now during this part of the bull run, I mean, personally, like I'm not looking for new coins to invest in. I'm just waiting for the ones that I have to do well, and I'm going to start taking profits. So yeah.
But would you still be adding into those ones that you bought earlier at a lower price, given that, for example, you have fresh new positions in stablecoins that you haven't used yet? Or would you rather leave them in stablecoins and not buy them anymore at these current levels?
Dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin pretty regularly, just because that's our investment plan to always be accumulating. Also, we've been adding to Ethereum when we see decent little dips and buying opportunities with Ethereum. But basically for me, when we're talking about Bitcoin hitting all-time high after all-time high, that's when we're going to stop accumulating. And we're just going to be waiting and then switching tactics and then start taking profits, because yeah, you don't want to buy at the top. You want to be taking profits at the top. So there is a point that I think we would stop accumulating. And that's probably, for me, it's like when Bitcoin's at like 75, 80,000 probably. And then just to see what happens, basically, yeah, when it starts hitting all-time highs. So I think Ethereum has a lot more to go. So that's why we're adding to that position still.
I'm curious on this. When you say you'd sell, does that mean even Bitcoin, or just the alts? Everything else will flow to Bitcoin. And second, highly connected to that, would you ever bring any of that back to fiat, or no anymore?
For Bitcoin, if we sell, it would be very, very little, and it would have to be a very high price to tempt us to sell that. So probably not Bitcoin. Yeah, very not likely that we would be selling Bitcoin. Far more likely to be, taking most of our profits. We're probably going to be selling like 95% of our altcoins and either putting it into Bitcoin or stable coins. And fiat, unless you can buy a house or buy property with Bitcoin directly, that's amazing, but that's not a reality for most people yet. So the fact still remains that you have to use fiat to live. You can use your crypto debit cards for other things, but big purchases like property or getting out of your debt or second citizenships or just moving somewhere, it requires you to get into fiat. So you should also be definitely considering your tax liabilities for when you bought versus when you sold and all that fun stuff. And when you are taking profits, make sure you're taking enough to cover the amount of tax you're going to have to pay on those profits, so you don't have to keep taking out and then getting in that loop. So that's a little helpful hint for whoever needs it.
Got it. Before I go to our last topic, I'm curious on this. Your allocation right now, how big of a chunk of percentage is Bitcoin, then Ethereum, then everything else with regards to your entire crypto portfolio?
Our portfolio is basically like 30% Bitcoin, 25% Ethereum, and then something like, this is always like, last I checked, it's based on USD value, so it does fluctuate based on the prices. And then it's, I believe Solana actually superseded Cardano, but then Cardano about 7% Solana, 6% Cardano, something like that. And then We have our stable coins, so we do still have some dry powder. It's always a good idea to have some cash on hand just in case. I think it's always good to not be completely all in on crypto and then not have anything just in case it dips. Luna was up there. Aave was another one. But basically, then our other categories roughly about 8 to 10% of our other portfolio. So,
but you're primarily crypto, right? Not pretty much
Yeah.
all into the space. No other fiat backed investments like stocks or bonds, etc.
No, we're not there. We're mostly like 90% is in crypto, and then the other amount is in some properties that we have for renting and stuff and to live in. But yeah, heavy into the crypto.
Got it. I only have 1% allocated to me. 99% is to my wife, so I don't actually own any. I don't actually own anything.
Markets are so cyclical and so controlled by the psychology of people who are trading in it, that it's going to be in cycles. And I'm skeptical that a piece of news can reverse a major trend in the crypto markets.